Our first session today is Raagam, Taanam, Pallavi, Lalli on the case. A conversation about one of Indian crime fiction's most beloved detectives, Lalli. Please welcome Kalpana Swaminathan, who is coming to the Bangalore Literature Festival for the first time, and she will be in conversation with the captivating Jerry Pinto.
It is unusual criminal punishment to roust people out of bed at this time on a Sunday. But thank you for coming. And I'm very glad to be in conversation with the writer whose work in several genres I've admired. I think I first came across Kalpana Swaminathan as one half of a Gemini duo, which was called Kalpesh Ratna at that point, if I remember right. It's still called that. Thank you. Good to know. It was there was a lot of very good literary work, which was such a refreshing change from Bombay's normal standard of literary writing, which is when the journalist rolls up to you and asks you, "What is your book about, and why did you write that book?" You know, these two questions which reveal the fact that the journalist hasn't read the book at all. Sorry.
Do you think you could put those two lights on? The one in front, because I can't see the audience. Sure. Yeah, thank you.
And later, I remember picking up a book called Bougainvillea House, which was narrated by a Roman Catholic Goan from Bandra, and I was very suspicious. But it was, yeah, because, you know, one is a Roman Catholic, not from Bandra, but, you know, you're thinking, how can a Kalpana Swaminathan get a Roman Catholic, right? But it was pitch perfect. It was a beautifully conceived older woman talking about her life and times, yeah? Yes. But in bringing great pathos and beauty to a very clear idiolect belonging to our community, my community. And I decided that this must be a writer who I should follow. And very soon, I think it was Venus Crossing, for which you got the Crossword Award. That's right, Venus Crossing.
I'm so sorry, Jerry, to be distracted, but these lights are getting
Yeah, that's
in my way,
right.
and I can't see anything. So I'm just asking them to put them off. Yeah.
You are a stronger man than I, Kalpana, because yesterday I tried to do that and they just ignored me. Okay, anyway. So Venus Crossing, if you have not read this collection of short stories, is a beautiful collection of short stories, which I remember one very strong one about a Bohari woman who, you know, has been genitally mutilated. But what I also remember was that every story sent me to the dictionary for at least 2 words.
That I don't believe of you, Jerry. Absolutely not. That's a lie.
But it was a wonderful, and since then she's of course been writing about, she invented Lalli, and I see Lalli as an ode to a secular, syncretic Bombay. The cast of characters includes Savio. Lalli, of course, is central. I think Lalli is Miss Jane Kalpana Maple Swaminathan. Tell me if I'm wrong.
You are very wrong.
Go for it then.
Well, one of the worst things that I've encountered ever since can you hear me? Is the mic working? Okay, since I invented Lalli, is that she's confused with Jane Marple. Now, this is very difficult for me to argue against. They have nothing in common except age. You see, when I invented Lalli,
Spinsterism.
I didn't know that was a disease.
A sly wit.
Not so sly also.
A conscious observing of character and constant linking of character to you know, sort of possibilities of larceny and malfeasance. That's where I saw it.
You mean a sneaky, nasty, suspicious mind?
Which also might be yours, Kalpana.
No, which is definitely not mine. Although this morning I took a walk and I passed a very convenient ditch or canal. And I did stop to look whether there was a body I could find. I did. I mean, you can draw your own conclusions. But to come back to Jane Marple and Lalli, let us give me 5 minutes, once and for all, to banish this illusion or this illusory comparison from your minds. First of all, contrary to Mr. Pinto's belief, spinsterism is not a disease. It is also prevalent in other genders. And
Bachelorism is as bad a disease, and I have it in spades, and I celebrate it.
yes, I mean, one can celebrate everything. And it's very important too, because I'm spinsterism infected too. So just take it. And now the other thing is that the only thing Jane and Lalli have in common is their age. Now, one is never sure how old Jane Marple is. She's very doddery in the books. And then, you know, there's television that comes about with 2 or 3 brilliant actresses doing her, all of a different age. And so it doesn't matter. And anyway, in those days, whenever Agatha Christie wrote, and she wrote well into her 80s, I think women were pictured even by her as at least 1 century older than they actually were. They were doing quite a lot, but they had this doddery effect of just knitting and sitting around at home and gardening and looking into the maids' lives. Oh, Lalli doesn't do any of that. If you've read even one book, you'd know that. You know, when I invented her, I was, how old was I? I think I was about 35 or 36, maybe, when I invented her, and the book came out a little later. I chose her age then as 63 because I thought it was a lovely, safe age. You know, women by that time were hardly as vulnerable. They were on top of their game. And I needed this woman, you know, to show the world what women can do at 63. And it was just beyond my imagination to think that 63 could be so safe and so successful. And now I'm 69. And Lalli hasn't aged a day. And I've just discovered that 63 wasn't like 63 at all. So now she's getting to be more 69.
In Raagam, Taanam, Pallavi, she's actually on the verge of death.
Yeah, she believes she's going to die. She is on the verge of death. It is an extremely difficult moment for her when her illness is actually a confrontation of a deep guilt. So, okay, can you hear me now better? Yeah. When her illness is actually a confrontation with her own guilt. And that, I think, is a very real situation which I have met with several times. And however much you try to filter out experience, your own experience or observation from what you write, and even if you believe that it's fiction, it is what Julian Barnes calls so beautifully as a composting of life. So somewhere what you have observed trickles in. You mentioned Venus Crossing. That book I wrote over maybe 20 years through a very painful part of my life. So every single story in that book is either experienced or very closely observed. Now, looking back at that book, I don't think it's a book I would write today. So,
why not?
Well, I'm much older, no? So the way you look at life has changed. And although the convictions are stronger, I think there is a greater readiness to embrace pain. There is a feeling that says that, closer to the Lalli feeling, which is, it's the converse of, in the midst of life, we are in death. It is in the midst of death, we are in life, which is so difficult for us to accept sometimes. You lose somebody you love deeply, and you're disgusted with yourself because you still feel the animal cravings of life. You're hungry, you have to go to the bathroom, you fall asleep. You shouldn't be doing anything when your world has fallen apart. And you step out and you find the world has carried on and they have not noticed your loss. I think this is something everybody experiences.
This gives me a lovely segue, to use that new word, into the notion of being a fully fledged medical practitioner and the writer of detective fiction. Because we know that there is a history of doctors who have done this, Arthur Conan Doyle being a very good example. And a doctor's work, I think, is largely is like detective fiction. You're given a series of clues limited to the body, and then you detect what is wrong, and then you go forward. Is that part of your mind ever involved in the writing of Lalli?
There are two parts to your question. Two parts to your question, Jerry. I'll take the first part first, which is that you said, is this what a doctor does? That you have a series of clues, and then yes, that is what a doctor did or does if they're as old as me and trained at the time. Now you have machines that do that part of it for you. So you just press in things and you have an algorithm that comes, and it doesn't matter who your patient is, and you've got the answer. So naturally, then the answer may not always be right. But the first part of it, yes, we are trained in observation, close observation. And for many people, and I was one of them, it becomes a kind of game when you're very young. And it's the greatest fun because, you're traveling to college and you're in a packed compartment. And you kind of take in the people around you. And before you know, you've spotted 6 diseases or 6 deformities. And well, it's nice because then you start making connections and you wonder why you wonder why a person is standing in a peculiar way. And you may either discover that they have a, in the jhola that they're carrying, they've got dissected body parts, or it may be that there's something wrong with the knee. So the choice is yours.
Actually, that's the thing about that Arthur Conan Doyle thing, no, where everything fits so naturally. Actually, it could be so many different things.
Yes, but the thing about Arthur Conan Doyle, or let's say Sherlock Holmes, because Sherlock Holmes is so, and Dr. Watson, they're so different from Arthur Conan Doyle himself, who was a pudgy, stodgy, committed kind of man who was deeply conservative, but who could see the evils of the Congo and fight against them and stand up for the Irishman whose name now escapes me. What is his name with a P? And all of that. But at the same time, he could not see what the British were doing. And he remained totally blind to that. He could talk about science, but he was into fairies. I mean, the real fairies, not gays. And, that kind of thing. And then...
And I think towards the end of his life, spiritualism
that's
also,
what I meant.
yeah.
Spiritualism. And he was that kind of guy. Now, I've often had this fantasy in my mind of what Sherlock Holmes would have done had he met Arthur Conan Doyle. And maybe, we'll write a story of that sort, because we love doing Holmes pastiche. So maybe that would come through. See.
Kalpana, you said there were 2 parts to my question. I think you answered the first part, which is about
No, I answered both. No, first part was that yes, doctors did train like that when they are as old as me today. But today's medical students don't have to train like that. Like for instance, our textbooks. Let's take the textbooks. Our textbooks today, I think, would qualify as interesting literature. They were beautifully written, and they were lavishly footnoted. And the footnotes were full of the most delicious things you can think about. And they had little stories which happened
Some
in
examples?
your mind. Well, there was a widow Dimanche. And that's all she was. She was called the widow Dimanche. And there was this pencil portrait of her. And she had horn growing out of her forehead. And she was an example of a very common ailment, which you can see very often. Which is a sebaceous cyst or a dermoid, and it can be easily taken out. And I mean, there are a dime a dozen. But anytime I see today a patient with an innocent sebaceous cyst, I'm always reminded of the widow Dimanche. And I wonder what happened and what role did she play in the French Revolution? Because if she is the widow Dimanche, one expects her to be called citizeness behind the back. There's that. And Now, what else can I quote for you? Oh, the other things are too rude to be quoted in.
No, so explain a little bit about that part of the brain and working with Lalli.
Well, first of all, Lalli does have medical qualifications, which appear sometimes. And I haven't yet told you the story of how she took to being what she is and how she got into the police and her first cases. So that's a book yet to come, which will explain a few things about her. But yes, she does have a special knowledge about a few things, which gives her an understanding. But she is a very close observer. And in Raagam, Taanam, Pallavi, there are a few instances of that, which I think I put it on purpose because I enjoyed writing about them. And I enjoyed writing about them because they're things I've actually observed. So, does that answer?
It's often said about Carnatic music that it is deeply mathematical in structure, that the microtones follow very clear patterns of mathematics. Is there something that drew you to the notion of using Ragam, Tanam, Pallavi and the detective story, which also must follow certain clear plot lines, and if it departs from them, must do so with bravado and braggadocio?
Oh, well, that's a very nice question, Jerry. And I wish I could answer it with honesty. But so I will. And the honest truth is, I know nothing at all about the mathematics of Carnatic music. I love Carnatic music. I keep listening to it simply because I'm an addict. And it's just pure pleasure for me. But the actual mathematics of it is beyond me. But then the mathematics of anything is beyond me. And Jerry is a mathematician, so it's very hard to explain my ignorance to him.
We were talking about this in the morning. Conversations with Kalpana Swaminathan can go straight from breaking a rib in Paris to the notion of of what mathematics is. But it's another language. It's the language of numbers. I think if you'd had a good teacher, you'd have just probably cracked it very soon.
I may or may not have, but the mysticism of numbers continues to fascinate me because one Lalli story, which is not yet published, is about something I discovered called a taxi cab number. And well, the beauty of prime numbers, for instance, these are fabulous things, which they're fabulous to me, like strange perfumes, simply because I don't know how they work. So a little bit of magic stays. When somebody goes and explains it, all the fun is gone.
That's true.
So I don't want a good teacher in mathematics.
Okay, very good. That's a useful way of going about it. Yeah. All the non-mathematical people
clapping, exactly.
Clap properly then.
I was so happy, so happy when I heard that applause. I can't tell you.
So I think one of the questions that seemed to turn up at each of the sessions yesterday, the ones that I was fortunate enough to attend, was the question of plot. Where does the plot come from and how do you work out the plot? So could you take us through both of those? I mean, you could take Raagam, Taanam, Pallavi or look at any of the other works as well. Kala Ghoda, for instance.
Okay, I'll answer both. Take both books and show you. With me, I cannot plot, meaning that I do not begin a story with a plot. I have tried to do it, and it has invariably not worked. Maybe it would have been a better story, but I have been unable to write it. So then where's the story in that? So a picnic, it doesn't work. So for me, the plot has to evolve from the people. And in anything I write, there is a moment when somebody, a voice, not necessarily a face as yet, starts talking to me. It starts with a line, it starts with something which intrigues me, which may not intrigue the reader as yet. So then I set about making it intrigue the reader, and that begins the story. So the point of ease in writing a novel, any novel, whether it's a detective novel or not, as you'll agree, is the moment when you lose control with what you're writing. Because I think plotting requires tight control on what you write. And I would not be able to do that. I would rather let the book take control. And then I know I can sit back and let the book write itself. Now, in these two books, long after a book is written, you ponder sometimes, where did this book come from? In Raagam, Taanam, Pallavi, I think the answer is, if I were to pick out the roots, I would say, the first thing is Dikshitar's music, which I think is very unique in all I've called him the Shakespeare of music, which is what he really was, because the sources of his music are so infinite. He has Western music, he has Hindustani classical music, he has Arabic music. He has every music a musician can think about, and then his own music, which is the strongest force of all. And then there is the structure of his songs, which is not the mathematical structure, but which in a way, it's like entering a building, and there's the architecture of his music. I think that would be a better word, which has always fascinated me. And there it was. And then somebody made a comment once, I don't remember who it was, saying, oh, he works on borrowed stuff. Don't you know that, he puts all English tunes into it? And they actually scoffed at a group of kritis which are passed off as notu swarams, where notu is simply the Tamirization, the word note, which is because they're on Western band music. And I was very irritated with this because for instance, a lot of music, especially Carnatic music, has musical tunes which are borrowed from all over the world. There's the basic root, Raagam Kalyani, for instance, has got an Arabic root. Then you have so many, also, it is one system of music which has absorbed it and retains or gives the credit for the name. For instance, you have Jaunpuri. Now, when Hindustani music plays Jaunpuri, it is slightly different from Carnatic music Jaunpuri. But Carnatic music Jaunpuri has got all the Arab influences in it. And Jaunpuri was produced in the 15th century, or I think end of the 14th. In Jaunpur by people who were Afghans. So it came from there. And you can feel that. Similarly, you can feel the rhythms of different lands in these different ragas, which are used in Carnatic music. So I think it's very important. It's like the word which is used commonly with Carnatic music, which is kacheri, which is Persian. It is kachehri, where you present your face, jahan aap hazir hote ho. In Hindi, a kacheri is a court. But here it becomes a performance, a stage. So you have this beautiful elasticity, which must be present. English is such a beautiful mothering tongue because it is so elastic. It is able to accept words from all languages. So that was another thing. So I felt I needed to, write against this attitude that there is no, I don't like purists of any sort. It has to be broken, and, you don't have to open windows. You have to break down walls when you meet a purist. So that was one. Then, thank you. And also there was an actual story, which is in the plot of the story, of this inability to express the pain of constant harassment and, of course, of rape, which is at the center of the book. So this too was a real story, which I think came to me, somebody tells you a story and goes on. And there was that. So it all came together. And the songs are very vital to the book. And in that, Jerry, there was a very strange thing that I experienced in the aftermath. First of all, I was lucky enough to have an editor for this book who had no knowledge of Carnatic music, but who went to YouTube or whatever and sussed out every single Raagam or Kriti and heard it, which was very heartening to and very rare to meet with. And then what was even more exciting to me is about a year after the book was published, an American who had never heard of even something called Carnatic music discovered the system of music through the book because he went exploring, and this is where the internet is so fantastic. And he heard all the songs and he fell in love with it. So I thought that was very, very rewarding for a writer to encounter. So the plot, now you know how it happened. And there is a refrain. The refrain in the book comes from two songs, which are very simple melodies, which is set, one is set on an Irish melody, and the other one has its meaning. So that was the story. And Kala Ghoda had a different origin altogether. You know, it was mainly Watson's Hotel. For those of you who are not familiar with Bombay, there is there was a hotel called Watson's Hotel, which was built, I think, in 1850, or it was before 1857, so, or it started around that time. I'm not so sure. Anyway, no, it was after 1857. The exciting thing about this hotel was that it was assembled on site from prefabricated cast iron moldings, which were brought from Europe. So it was the only British hotel. And of course, Tata built his Taj Mahal Hotel because he was refused admittance in Watson's Hotel. So Watson's Hotel still stands, and it's always intrigued me because it's, after different stages, it's now a ruin, and nobody wants to actually demolish it, but it's standing there. And then the Kala Ghoda itself, you know, which is a space, an art space, so to say, and which has become kind of synonymous with different art festivals, and which is the center of the art district of Bombay. Now, even a horse is there after 2017. And the horse is a facsimile of the original Kala Ghoda, which had Prince Albert seated on it. Albert it was, yeah. And the horse is still prancing, and the horse still, it is riderless, but it still has got all its trappings on it, which I wonder why the sculptors put it. So the whole thing was very intriguing because it is the center of Bombay Gothic architecture, that area. And that ghost still prevails. And it started because I had to write a device, a mystery game, which I did. And of course, you know, when you're doing a game, you have to be as extravagant as possible. So I did the thing in verse with clues all around the place. So there were, I think, a lot of people, more than 1,000 people participated in that game. So then I said, okay, might as well make this a little bit more decent and write a book. And I got to that. And there it is. But the interesting part in writing that book was the rediscovery of that area, which happened because they're art washing the place. They were, at that time, COVID was just getting over and Bombay was coming back to life. And it was nice to see how a place which has been practically derelict for a year was being peopled in a different way. So it was exciting writing the book.
Just so we can take a little wander around your other writing, there is a sense that in the research that you do into Bombay's past, for instance, takes a fair amount of detection, as it were. You know, you're following clues, you're looking for evanescent figures who are vanishing into the landscape, leaving behind literary trails. Would you like to talk a little about Garcia de Orta and your fascination with him?
Not really about Garcia de Orta, though I'll come to him, because the first part of your statement, yes. I would like to talk a little about the books that I write along with Ishrat Syed as Kalpish Ratna, where we have a detective who exists in 2 time zones. We have Ratan Oak, who lives in the present, and we have Ram Ratan Oak, who is his hidden self, who surfaces at moments of extreme stress. So in the first book, which we wrote called Quarantine Papers, which was set in 1897, 96, 97, during the Bombay plague, it involved a tremendous amount of research. And actually the book came about because of the research we were doing on the Bombay plague for a different book, which we wrote, which we had written earlier. And the story stemmed from the documents which we read, because the British kept very, like the Portuguese, they were very careful documenters of everything. And in those days, those documents came in 3 hands. If somebody spoke Marathi, and it would be written first in Marathi, then there would be a translator who would translate it into English. And then there would be, he was the Dubashi who would do that. And then there would be the British clerk who would then transcribe that translation. And then finally, if it was late enough into the day, you got a typewritten one also. But this was not yet typewritten, it was all handwritten. And these were the personal accounts of people who suffered during the plague. And they were tremendously moving documents. They were written by ordinary people, some men, some women. They were full of anguish at the kind of disciplines which were forced on them, the separations that they were forced, and the illogic of these things, compared to which you had the voice, the official voice, which was telling you how right it was and how legal it was. So yes, the research was tremendously interesting. And we went on after, so this detective, we had to center him with the plague in also the place where many of the great discoveries of 20th century medicine took place. And very few people, even in that place, know about it, which is my college, which is also Ishrat's college, which is Grand Medical College. So the plague was, during the plague, during the late 19th century, Bombay was the crucible of all medical advances. It's very hard to believe that today, but when you actually see the number of events that happened, very few of that may have filtered into the novel. But for us, it was revelation, because we studied here and nobody knew about it. We experienced all this without knowing how this experience came to us. So it became interesting for us to recreate forensic medicine of that time in the person of Ram Ratan Oak, who lived at that time and who was a police surgeon. So you have a forensic investigator who belongs to the late 19th and early 20th century, and you have an investigator who's of the present. They work in tandem. So that's how the research led to that.
Given that Lalli is a retired police person and Savio is actively working, did you do much research into police procedure?
No, I got out of that one very cleverly, because I want to get into all that mess. So you see, the thing was that I never really tell you what Lalli did as a policewoman. I haven't yet told you. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. But the fact is that because of political pressure, she walked out in 1993, as any decent policewoman or man should have done in Bombay. She concentrated her energies on what really interested her and me most, which is domestic crime. And when you say domestic crime, it's, there is no detective in the history of detective literature, beginning with Sherlock Holmes, who hasn't pointed out, and he actually says this, I think it is in Silver Blaze, Watson says, what charming cottages when they're passing in the railway journey and they see the countryside, and Holmes says, oh, they are the crucibles of murder. And you have Poirot saying the same thing, saying for every one detective murder, there are at least 10 that go undetected. And as a second year medical student, I happened, because you can imagine, I think from the Lalli books, that I was a constant, what shall I say, I used to ferret out all these old books like Dr. Q in that. So there was this forensic textbook, which was Modi's, not this Modi, though he could have well written it, which is this compendium of Indian crime, which was published in 1920. And I happened on this book, and I can tell you, it left me horrified. I mean, I was already, I had, by the time, I think I was steeped to the gills in detective fiction written by other people. And for years, I could not touch a single book of detective fiction after reading Modi's Toxicology. It was the most horrific text I'd ever read. And it was happening in our country.
It was happening in our country. It continues.
Sorry, wrong tense. I know.
Absolutely.
He's very good at grammar.
Okay. It is time also now. Grammar is about time, no? Largely, yeah. So it is time now to open to the audience. If you have questions, would you put up your hand and we'll make sure Mike gets to you. Otherwise, we can chat endlessly. You haven't done Garcia de Orta. You said, I'm coming to him, but you never came to him.
Yeah, I think Garcia Dorta is a dead doctor. And we like writing, Ishrat and I, we love writing about dead doctors because death is imminent and we are both doctors. So might as well leave a footprint or two about the others. Now, the nice thing about dead doctors is they always did something else. So,
like writing novels.
Yes. Like, it's surprising. I mean, Arthur Conan Doyle, for instance, spent a long time on a ship. And he did nothing on that ship. He hated it. He just wanted to come ashore and, I think, play cricket and football again. And Sherlock Holmes he wrote because he didn't get a single patient when he was waiting for patients in his. So everybody goes through these kind of bald patches, but it's even more interesting to find out what other dead doctors did. And Garcia Dorta was a dead doctor, is a dead doctor, but when he was alive, he was born in 1500 and he died in somewhere around 1565. And he spent 35 years. He was a Portuguese gentleman. He spent 35 years in India practicing medicine. And in his 63rd year, he published a book which in its English translation reads as The Drugs and Simples of India. And a simple, for those of you who are not familiar with the language of medieval medicine, is any medicine which contains only one plant or one herb. That's all it means. So he wrote this book, and that book was a bestseller in Europe by the time Garcia was dead. And people forgot about this book for a century, couple of centuries. And then it got a second life, very highly edited life, in the late or mid-19th century. And finally, it was Englished in 1913, and it was read by us in 2000. And when we read it, we found a great deal of contrast between the book as it stood and the impression we had formed of the man historically. And all we knew about this man was his book. So we started looking into his life, and we're still looking into his life. And we haven't yet written the book, so why am I talking about it?
It's kind of what they call a teaser.
Ah.
Yeah. Keep your eye out. जल्द से जल्द आ रहा है आपके शहर में एक्शन और इमोशन की पहली मिलन गार्सिया de Orta.
Jerry, I think that was a wonderful teaser. So I have to go and finish the book now.
Good news for all of us. Is there a question? Oh, lovely. There are two questions over here.
Please.
First, the lady there.
I'll give it to you.
Thank you so much.
Hi, ma'am. Good morning. I just want to say this is a huge fangirling moment for me because my absolute favorite book as a child was Jaldi's Friends,
Okay.
which is when I got to know you, and I've been obsessing over you ever since. Sorry. Uh, so I still remember, even though it's been many years since I read the book, there's one scene in which the elephant is stopping a car from switching lanes and had such a profound impact on me that even now, 20 years later, when I'm driving, I make sure to maintain lane discipline.
Oh, that's wonderful. Oh, this is the nicest thing I've heard in a week.
Thank you. It's a book that I used to recommend to a lot of my friends, and I'm just very curious about your experience writing the book and how it came to be.
Answer? Okay. So first of all, thanks so much for remembering my elephant, huh? King Ilango. And that was very, very touching to hear that it's improved your driving skills. I just wish it had improved mine. Because lane cutting has always been my, maybe that's why I wrote it. Put it in, yeah. As to why I wrote the book was because I'm a dog person, as who isn't? And I could not, my life, a dogless life has been my fate ever since my dog died. And I've never had the heart to have another dog to live with. But stray dogs always fascinate me, and they have such an active, intelligent life. So I had to invent that book and write it.
Would you like to ask the question? Hi. The first book I read of yours was actually when both of you wrote it, Kalpesh Ratna. It was the one on plague. I think it is called Room 001.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I picked up that book is I always wondered, I mean, I used to be a writer and I stopped writing because I found it very difficult to work with other people. So I'm really curious to understand what it is like to write a book with somebody else. And you've done it so many times. Is it enjoyable? Is it difficult? Could you please tell us?
I don't know how to answer that question because, well, I think a lot of it depends on whom you're writing with. And Ishrat and I have been friends for 42, for 3 years.
And you're still friends.
Yes. That is the question. At the end of every book, a new novel is just out. And it is a book, incidentally, which deals with the aftermath of murder. We wrote the first part of this book in 2009. It's still answering your question. So don't think that I'm, deflecting. First part of the book we wrote in 2009. And the book ended with a murder.
No, what's we? Like we wrote means what? You wrote like that.
Well, not quite. Not quite, because we are both right-handed. So very often we find that we have actually investigated this privately, and I'm not so sure that Ishrat would like me to answer that, but I'm telling you, sometimes we've tried. We start off a sentence and we leave it to, blind the other person to finish the sentence. And then when the sentence is revealed, it's the same. So it is literally the same. And very often it is not the same also, but very often it is the same. The thought is the same. And sometimes the words are the same. So we don't, and actually in every book we investigate this because after having written a book, or when we reach the first draft, we always read the book together, aloud. One person reads, then the other person reads. Now don't start. I know you, just to forestall that, I said. So that's the time when you discover. And I think it's also the having worked together as surgeons, because surgery is is a team discipline, which doesn't mean that I have yet written with my anesthetist or with the nurse. That may happen, but I don't know them. No, they're not real good friends. So because it means sharing mistakes, anticipating dangers, and addressing the pitfalls. You have to do all that. It's like making an omelette, no? So you never learn how to make one till you made a bad one. Then you know that you can't do this and you can't do that. So it's not so bad writing with two people. For us, it's very good because it's very it's nice to see how you can progress. You can push a little further with another brain than you can on your own. And it's true because I'm more comfortable writing non-fiction with Ishrat than I am on my own. So I don't write non-fiction on my own.
I think
And different skill sets.
I think that brings us to the end of this session. If you have any questions, Kalpana will be sitting at the writer's desk and signing copies. And of course, you can ask her questions there. Enjoy yourselves for the rest of the day. Thank you so much, Kalpana.
Thank you for your very patient hearing and for your lovely responses.